Welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey towards embracing your worthiness and creating extraordinary success? I am your host, Allison Lacusier, a certified professional coach, a professional speaker, and a female founder. As a passionate advocate for women's empowerment, I've dedicated my career to helping individuals like you unlock their true potential, cultivate unwavering confidence, and live a life aligned with their deepest desires. With years of experience in the coaching industry, I've witnessed firsthand the incredible transformation that occurs when we tap into our worthiness and step into our power. Throughout this podcast, I'll be your guide, sharing insights, tools, and strategies to help you navigate the path towards unshakable self-confidence and fulfillment. Drawing from my own journey as a successful business owner, I'll provide you with practical advice, actionable steps, and thought-provoking conversations with industry leaders. From overcoming self-doubt to setting and achieving audacious goals, we'll explore a wide range of topics designed to empower you to embrace your worthiness in every step of your life. Through these engaging interviews and solo episodes, I'll share my experiences, lessons learned, and wisdom gained from our remarkable guests who've achieved remarkable success in their respective fields. So if you're ready to leave self-doubt behind, step into your authenticity, and thrive as the empowered woman that you are, then this podcast is for you. It's time to claim your worth, align with your purpose, and manifest the success you desire. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this empowering adventure. Welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. And welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast. My name is Allison Lacusier, your host, and I'm here with another very special guest, which I know many of you will recognize immediately if you've been in dentistry at all. Judy Kay, welcome to the Clearly Worthy podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So for our listeners who may not have heard of you, have maybe not benefit from the work that you've done or been in any of your lectures, let our audience know just a little bit about you.
Well, I've been in dentistry for a very long time, longer than probably a lot of people have been alive. So I've been in it since the early 80s. And so it's changed a lot. I was pre-days where we didn't wear gloves and gum disease or periodontal disease was called pyorrhea. And oh my gosh, there's a million different things have changed. But I got involved in dentistry as a receptionist because there weren't scheduling coordinators back then or anything else, and worked with very engaged and passionate doctors who invested in their team. So not only did they believe that the business team has to be great at the business aspect, but they also needed to understand dentistry as well. So I was fortunate enough to work with doctors that sent me to a lot of continuing education, also brought me into the clinical arena to learn that as well. But so I was an office administrator for 26 years and then started my business in 2006, and primarily helping practices run their practice better.
I love it. And you speak, how often are you speaking now?
Well, I'm either somewhere coaching or speaking almost on a weekly basis. I did take about 3 weeks off to move. So now I'm getting back into the swing of things, but I'm on the road at least 3 out of every 4 weeks per month.
Amazing. And I've just heard, we were talking about it before the podcast even started. Like, I haven't met you until this podcast really, but I've just heard through office managers, the work that you've done in the industry. So I love being able to connect with you today and chat about how we empower the dental industry. And so what we're going to be diving into today is really like, what success can you create when you can overcome your fear of failure, when you can become more confident. And I want to pull on your years of experience and your stories about what you've seen in our industry as it relates to what you can really build when you can overcome these internal fears.
Well, and I always say it's all in our head, right? Everything that we can do or can't do is all in our head. And when I see young practice owners as well as long-term practice owners, there's almost this discomfort of asking for what they want, trying to please everybody. And always, I'm not a good leader, Judy Kay. I'm not comfortable with conflict. I'm not, all these things I'm not. And it's interesting because one of the first things that I do with doctors is ask them what they think makes up a great leader, right? And because they think it's, the initial response is always telling people what to do and making people accountable. And I said, honestly, that's really not what a great leader does. A great leader is all about leading by example and creating passion for what you do that is influencing them as well. And most of them don't understand that when I start working with them. And so it's really about having them even be creative and think about what's important to them. What would they like in their culture? What if, and I always use the verbiage, if I could wave a magic wand and make your life easier or better, what would I change? And I said, let's just dream. And so I'll write down things. They'll say, well, that's kind of far out there. I go, no, go for everything. Let's just write everything down. And then when we start saying, okay, let's take this, let's go back to that line item and let's talk about how do we get there? What does that look like? And every doctor is wired so differently. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. And I always get this, Judy Kay, what's your system? Well, my system is actually communicating with people and finding out what's important to them. And then finding out what makes them afraid or what gets in the way. That's as basic as it is. But everybody wants that 1, 2, here's an easy out.
Yeah.
So that really is helping them understand what they can achieve, helping them dream a little bit. And those who have been in practice for a period of years too, a lot of times they get into this idea. And was speaking to a doctor yesterday, and he said there's 3 stages, survival when you're first starting, just can I survive? Success, and then it becomes significance. And I think that so many get lost in the survival and then into success, and then they go, this isn't really what I imagine. And so I work with a lot of doctors who've been in the industry 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, even more, that want the practice that they've always wished for and didn't know that they could have.
What do you think it is that gets in the way of us or practice owners or really anyone of believing that what they want is possible?
I think sometimes, I don't know, I was raised in a small town on a farm, and I was always taught that if you ask for stuff, you're being kind of selfish, right? And if it's about you, you're being kind of selfish. Well, and when it's your practice, it's your name on the shingle, it's yours, what you worked hard for. It's time to make it your practice. And then you're going to attract team members who want to work in that type of atmosphere, and you're going to attract patients as well. I think that we look outside and we compare and we think it has to be this way. And I will go down this path just a little bit. I remember when I started my career as a speaker and consultant, everybody told me this is how it has to be. And I was like, nah, I don't think so. Well, you can't do this. You can't wear denim jackets, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. And you can't do this. And you should never use the color orange for your business because it's too fluffy. And I was just like, it's my business. If it's going to fail, it's going to fail because I went down the path that I wanted to go. And I will tell you that there are so many ways to do this. And when we get lost in other people's opinions, and I ask very few opinions because I put blinders on. This is what's important to me. I focus on that. I clarify. I reflect what I still want on a yearly basis. Is this where I want to go? What do I want to do this year? What do I want to achieve? I'm not so concerned about what other people are doing around me. And that helps keep me clear as well. Because otherwise you start looking and they're going, well, they're doing this and they're doing that. But if it doesn't fill your bucket, don't do it.
100%. And I think it takes some courage to pave your own path and to identify that just because it hasn't always been done a certain way, it doesn't mean it can't be. And how do you help practice owners or people really instill that confidence in themselves when they might not feel like whatever in their life is resonating with them? They know they have their own vision, but it's like that first step towards kind of paving that own trail on your own can be really scary. So how do you kind of get them over that ledge?
Well, I think that it has a lot to do with their joy and their desire to keep their passion for what they do. I'll give you an example. I was working with a young doctor who had listened to this consultant and that, and it was so focused on getting everything paid off. And it was in essence, you work. And then 20 years later, you can lift your head up and see if you actually like your practice.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not quite how it goes. And I said, well, what makes you excited? And he goes, I love music. And I said, interesting. And I said, what would make you happy? And he goes, he goes, now this is crazy. And I said, okay, let's go crazy. He said, I'd love to bring my piano into my office, and I'd love to sometimes in between patients, he's an endodontist, I'd love to be able to play some music. And I said, then let's do it. And he goes, well, won't people think I'm silly? I said, no, it'll make you unique and your patients will love it. I said, well, let me ask you this. Are you good? Because if you're
Yeah.
not, maybe we shouldn't practice, right?
Yeah.
He said, no, I'm actually very good. And that was a step. So it starts with baby steps. Find something that is really something that makes a huge difference, that when you think about it, or your doctor thinks about it, and this is what I do with my clients, they just like, they smile, the energies are just like, they're almost like lifted up. And I said,
Mhm.
let's start with that. Let's implement one little thing and let's start. It's baby steps and see how does that make you feel. And here's the thing, people are going to have an opinion of you no matter what you do. You might as well make it authentic to who you are. And no matter who you talk to, this person thinks you're right, this person thinks you're wrong. It's not about pleasing everybody. Because if you try to please everybody, you've lost yourself.
Mhm. Oh man, that is very, very wise words. I call this alignment, like alignment with yourself, alignment with the vision that you have for your life, alignment with your values. And my thought is that you can't really escape alignment. You can avoid it and ignore it, but it's like that gap between like who you're meant to be and where you are just keeps widening. And that
Yes.
is where like the stress, the dissatisfaction, the discomfort comes from. But then when we start to close that gap, that's where we start to feel more of ourselves. And it's so funny. Like, I think when I first started in business, I was like, oh, it's all about P&L, it's all about numbers, it's data. And like that is important for sure. And yet you're talking about like, let's start with joy. Let's start with what makes you happy about your life. Like, let's really start there. How many people do you find like when you're going through this process, like, is it easy for people to find their joy or is it sometimes hard?
I think for some it's harder because they haven't ever tried to experience it. They've always felt that you just do this, right? And I the people who hire me already know what I'm all about because they've heard me speak or someone's referred them to me, so they know where I'm coming from. So it's not like if it's someone that's only bottom line focused, are they going to hire me? Probably not. But what they don't realize is that first of all, they're going to have way less team turnover. I mean, think about it. If you're unhappy as a doctor, where does that go to your team, right? Your
Yeah.
team then is like feeling this. If you're not passionate, how do you expect your team to be passionate, right? If you're
Mhm.
just coming in and going, here we go again, who's on the schedule? And you're doing this, your team is going to be exactly the same way. And who wants to work in an environment where the person who started it isn't passionate about it?
Yeah.
So when we look at this, we're like, okay, joy doesn't just happen. You have to be mindful about it. You have to create experiences and opportunity by being present in the moment. It's not just about like, okay, joy, show up.
Yeah.
You have to be aware of what makes you feel fulfilled. That satisfaction and purpose is everything. It really
Mhm.
is. And so it's finding those little things for people that fits their needs and letting them know that they can run their practice however they want. So many offices, so many doctors have said, thank you for giving me my practice back that I always wanted. And that's
Mm.
really what it's about. I don't come in there with a book, although I wrote 3 books, so I can just say it's by the book of Judy, but I don't come in there with expectations on how they have to do things. I always say, as long as it's legal, ethical, and within their licensure, I'm happy to help them get there.
Yeah.
So, and I want them to have a healthy, the healthy environment, because I'm not going to get team members to stay in an unhealthy environment. Imagine the attrition in teams when you have an unhappy doctor. And that bottom line, people don't even see that, but the cost to rehire and train is exponential. And then
Mhm.
just imagine patients coming in, we can tell no matter where we go, whether it be a hospital or a dental office or a bank or anywhere else, that if there's discord, you can feel it right away. And so can our
Mhm.
patients.
Yeah.
And people want to go where people enjoy it. It feels good.
Yes. 100%. It's funny how we're like, if somebody's only focused on the bottom line, then they might not like resonate with that. But when we really look at it, joy affects the bottom line so many ways and in probably some of the biggest ways.
Yeah. Well, and talk about sustainability as well.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're unhappy, you're probably going to retire early. You're probably, or you're going to be miserable. And time becomes more important as we get older than money,
Mhm.
because it
Yes.
becomes limited. So I think that most doctors that I work with find out in a very short time that we can do this one thing and it made such a difference. So now I can take that next step. And it's not about doing everything at once, it's baby steps.
That incremental change, the 1% better each day, the moving the needle in the right direction. It's so powerful. So, how do you help? Actually, let me ask you this question because I think this will be a fun question. If you could wave a magic wand and have your teams, your practices, your doctors believe something about themselves to be true or believe something, and it could be more than one thing that would move the needle on their practice, on their life, on themselves, what would you want them to know and believe?
I think probably the most cohesive and aligned teams come from believing that they must treat each other as well as they would treat a patient.
Mm,
That the filters need to go back on, that respect and kindness um, and professionalism need to start with each other. And we say that all the time, but there's double standards everywhere. So when we come together, if we can let go that it's not just about me, it's about us. And how do I contribute to us as a team? And how do I help versus looking at what do I need? It's like, what do they need? I think that propels practices forward. When it comes from standing in our own way, I think if we have supportive team members and we have a supportive doctor or doctors, then we can get out of our way because we have trust. If you don't have trust, you aren't willing to put yourself out there. You aren't willing to risk it. You aren't willing to do something that might not work, even though it could be the best thing, because what if?
yeah.
So, and I'll go back to my own business, my own career. Part of the reason that I was able to say, no, I want to do it my way. Well, first of all, I'm a stubborn person, but more importantly is my best friend is my husband. And we actually just celebrated 28 years of marriage. And he is so supportive, so believing that even when he shouldn't have been, he was behind me 100% saying, you can do this. So you need people around you that believe in you to help.
Mhm.
And when we look at teams and coming in the office and doctors, if you have naysayers, if you have people that don't trust in you, it's going to be very difficult to move forward because they're going to try and knock you down a bit. And
Mhm.
I still remember, and I will not name names, but this person, if they hear the podcast, will recognize it. I still remember when I said I was going to write my first book. And she said, you can't write a book. I was like, why can't I write a book? Well, you don't know how. And I said, well, I guess I'll Google it. I'll figure it out. Right. But there are people out there that are so concerned that you might step up a little more in their mind, because when we compare, someone always loses, right? That they want to keep you there. And how dare you? If I'd never consider it for myself, why would you? And she
Mhm.
was a dentist. Right. So she was that much more educated, that much more. And it was like, I don't think so. I think I can do this.
I
So I
love
think
that.
when it comes to overcoming, you have to find people that truly believe in you and trust in you as well.
Wow. And I'm sure this may have happened in your life. It's definitely happened in mine. And I find it to be one of the most painful things that you can go through when you recognize that maybe the people in your life like aren't in support of you or you've outgrown them or people that used to be in your corner just really aren't anymore. How do you suggest people handle that or how do you yourself deal with that when you're like, this is an energy vampire and we may have been friends, we may have been good for each other at some point, but we're not anymore.
Well, there's a quote, and I don't know if I have it exactly right, by Maya Angelou that said, believe people when they show you who they are the first time.
Mhm.
We have a tendency to cover things. We have a tendency to make excuses. We have a tendency to go, well, they didn't really mean that,
Mhm.
when they did. And I think that when you start to see someone show up consistently the same, I think it starts with, first of all, a conversation, because sometimes people are unaware. And you can say, I don't know if you're aware of this, but when you tell me that I'm not capable of doing something, that really hurts my feelings. It's uncomfortable for me. It feels undermining. If you could tell me specifically, like, oh, what have you done, or ask me questions about it to help support it, that would be a different story. But when you say you can't do this, that's just telling me I'm not capable. And that's not comfortable for me. If you believe it, and some people are so afraid of risk that they will carry that risk onto you. And that's where we have to clarify. They're going, well, what if you fail? Well, what if I do? you know what, if I do, I'm prepared. I'm prepared because people want to protect you from being hurt sometimes.
Mhm.
The hovering, the helicopter moms, the helicopter friends as well. So we want to define that first and then just say, look, I understand that there's this risk and there's this and there's this and there's this, but I'm willing to go there because there's this, right?
Mhm.
So I
Yes.
think it's fine. But if they're still non-supportive, then I just end the relationship. I know it sounds terrible, but I say, we're not aligned here. I have goals that you don't support, and it's really uncomfortable. And because then you don't talk about anything because what are you doing? I remember starting my business and I had a friend of mine who said, when are you going to wake up and realize that you need to actually get a real job? And I was like, no, I think I'm good. I got a real
Yeah.
job.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's that's wild. And I've received my fair share when I started my business and moved into this kind of unknown space. And it's interesting to me. I always tell my clients when you're in a mode of expansion, meaning you're doing things that are outside of your regular everyday life, your habits, you're expanding into this new version of yourself. You're going to run up against resistance when it comes to the people in your life because again, two reasons: people want to protect you, but two, the second one, people also see you as a mirror to themselves, and
exactly.
they can feel insecure, uncomfortable, threatened, like, why are you doing this? It makes me look a certain way. And of course they wouldn't say that, but it's that energy and that feeling inside. So definitely on your way to success, on your way to your vision, don't let people in your life that aren't supportive of you, aren't aligned with you, get in the way. Don't let them be a barrier to your success.
Well, and exactly. Or someone that's happy with just status quo,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
If it's
exactly.
good enough for them, it should be good enough for us. Well, maybe it's not.
Mhm. I love it. And so I love the idea, like you represent everything to do with people being their best self, being their true self, and figuring out what makes them light up, what makes them joyful, and then aligning their life and business towards that. And so what other steps along the way do you help people get there? What else do they encounter? What else do they face in order to achieve that?
Well, but for dentists, I help them first of all by helping them, asking them to choose 4 core value words. Like if you were
Mm,
going to choose adjectives to describe your culture, what would those adjectives be? And that really, because it has to be measurable, it has to be definable. So then if I'm hiring someone, I'm going to make sure that this person matches those core values. If we're talking about how we communicate at the office, it has to support those core values. If we're going to implement something, we used to write big vision and mission statements that just became conceptual and nobody did anything with them. And people will
mhm,
go, well, it's in a book somewhere, and I think it goes like this. It's like, no, people don't remember sentences, but they can remember up to 4 words. And that we want on the mindset of every team member and the doctor when we step across the threshold of this is who we are today. And how do we make that experience for each other and for our patients? So
mm,
then when someone's behavior is off, you don't have to say, gee, Susie, you're wrong today or you're behaving badly. It's, Susie, help me understand how this behavior supports our core value of kindness. Or, I mean, there's thousands of adjectives. You choose 4, but oftentimes dentists are overachievers and they want like 10 or 15. You can't have 10 or 15, it's too many. So I use basics. Number 1, for me, I'm a lifter. I choose that no matter who I encounter or when, I try to make it a positive conversation, even if it's a difficult conversation. Number 2, I'm authentic. I'm always who I am. I don't pretend to be something else. And I think that's why people are comfortable with me. Number 3, it's important for me to be happy. I want to be happy in life. So I make decisions like when someone calls me and asks me about something and I get that pit in my stomach, and regardless of how much money, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think it's a good fit. And
mhm.
number 4, I'm committed. My husband might say I need to be committed occasionally, but I make it happen regardless. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So everything that I build around is always on those core values. I live, eat, breathe, sleep them. And they're an accountability too, because there are times, as I said, I fly almost every week, that you don't feel like being a lifter. You want to kick the dog, actually. But that's who you commit to being. And then you're not reacting on emotions, you're reacting based on the person that you want to be.
Yes. So powerful, especially in our world where I think we have so many more distractions and so many more ideas of what success looks like and how you're going to get there and all of the books and all of the things. Knowing what you want, knowing who you are, knowing what those core values that you operate by will create a guiding light for you.
Right.
And you're so right. Like it's not about a policy that you're going to stick to for the rest of your life. It's about how are you showing up, honoring the things that matter the most to you, and that will always guide you towards your destiny, really, where you're
Right.
meant to be.
Right. And when you have that, when you're solid on that, you'll know really quickly whether that serves it or sabotages it.
Yeah.
And it's very clear. I think about that so often, and you have people who are, oh, this is popular now, so I'm going to do this now. Oh, I'm going to do this now. And they never really establish who they are because they're changing based on what they think is popular. It's really important to be authentic to who you are and finding that, and it changes everything in your life.
Mm.
And I
And
remember as I was building my business and I was getting busier and busier, people are going, oh, you're going to hire a bunch of people? Or you're going to do this? And I said, no, I'm going to do it on my own. Well, but Judy Kay, you could do this. And I said, I know I could, but I don't want to. This bigger is not always better. And sometimes you get bigger and you feed the beast.
yeah.
Right. So let's go back to the P&L because I understand numbers really well. In fact, when I was in the business side of the office, I handled all of that all the time. So I get it. I have an accounting background. I understand it. But you know what? A lot of you grow and you grow. And there's that tipping point where when you start bringing more people in, you have to make exponentially more to net. So, I look at it, where's my happy net? Right.
Yes. It's so important to look at. It's there, especially in the world of social media where people do share numbers. They're like, oh, I hit $1 million this year. It's like, well, how much did you take home? How much did you
How
put in
much
your
did you
bank account?
keep? Yeah.
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 So it's so important to know that context and really like be authentic to who you are and what matters to you. And you will be more profitable, more joyful, less stressed, have a happier team. All of it will make sense. And it does. It starts with this core. So I want to honor you for all of the work you've done in our industry. It's been such a great journey for me to be able to meet you and hear about what you're doing in the industry to help serve all of the practices, all of the people, all of the dentists, and really make that impact. And I can already see just from this 20 minutes podcast, learning about the impact that you have in people's lives. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to wrap up with our final question. And, this question really stems from that feeling that we see sometimes of people, everyone in the industry, but women specifically, sometimes not feeling confident or enough or worthy of whatever it is that they want in their life or what they feel like they might deserve. And I just love, hearing about your story and your journey because you emulate a sense of worthiness of being who you are and being yourself and doing things your way. And I think it's such a beautiful example. And so this final question is sponsored by our friends Care Credit, who just put their hands up and said, yes, we will support women empowerment. We'll support practices and introduce me to you. So I would love to finish up with this final question. And it's more of a finish the blank statement and just say whatever really comes to mind in your heart. And it's women are worthy of, and you finish the sentence.
Women are worthy of whatever they desire.
Mm.
So I think that, yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. All of what you've shared today has been just so helpful. And I know people could probably listen to this again and again and get a lot of really, really quality information, activities, just personal thoughts around this. So go back and check out your values, check out who you are, and give yourself permission to build your business and your life in the way that you desire it. So thank you so much for being on the show, and we will see you all next time.